You lived a whole little life before the age of 3. You arrived, opened your eyes for the first time, heard your mother's voice, tasted food like a tiny confused food critic, took your first steps probably with the balance of a drunk penguin, said your first word, and everyone acted like you had just delivered a TED Talk. And you remember none of it. Not one scene, not one smell, not one dramatic fall onto a carpet while adults clapped like you had conquered Everest. Most people think the answer is simple. Your brain was not ready yet. You were too young. Easy. Done. Case closed. Except no. The real answer is much stranger. Your baby brain was not failing to record your life. It was recording a lot. Maybe more than anyone gives it credit for. The memories were there. Then something came along and wrecked the place. In 1905, Sigmund Freud gave this weird human blank spot a name. He called it infantile amnesia, which is a very official way of saying, why do none of us remember being tiny potatoes with eyes? And here is the strange part. Babies can form memories. We know this. In the 1980s, psychologist Carolyn Rovi Collier at Rutgers University ran a beautifully simple experiment. She tied a ribbon from a baby's ankle to a mobile hanging over the crib. When the baby kicked, the mobile moved. The babies figured it out fast. Kick foot. Thing dances. Fantastic system. No subscription required. And they loved it. When the same babies came back days later, they remembered. They started kicking right away, like, ah yes, my ceiling toy machine. I have returned. Even 2-month-old babies could keep that memory for a couple of days. 6-month-olds could remember for weeks. So infant brains can learn. They can store information. They can recall it. But those memories do not last. By the time you become an adult, they are gone. Not blurry. Not buried under an old emotional couch. Gone. For decades, scientists could not fully explain why. The first part of the answer is structural. Deep inside your brain sits the hippocampus, a small curved structure that works like the engine room of memory. It helps take a lived experience, a birthday, a conversation, a walk in the rain, that one embarrassing thing you said in 2012, and turn it into an episode you can replay later. In adults, the hippocampus works with the prefrontal cortex. Together, they tag memories, store them, retrieve them, and occasionally bring them back at 2 a.m. for no useful reason. But in infants, this system is still under construction. Not lightly under construction either. More like half the roads are missing, the signs are upside down, and one worker is asleep in a stroller. The connections between the hippocampus and the cortex are still being built. Key regions like the dentate gyrus, which acts like a gateway for new memories, are not fully wired until somewhere between ages 2 and 4. So your baby brain could form short-term memories. It just could not move them into long-term storage the way an adult brain does. But that is only half the story. And the next part is even stranger. In 2014, 2 neuroscientists in Toronto discovered something that changed the way researchers think about infant memory. Sheena Jocelyn and Paul Franklin at the Hospital for Sick Children had a hypothesis that sounded almost rude. What if the very thing building your brain was also destroying your memories? Here is what they meant. In the first years of life, your hippocampus is producing new neurons at an extraordinary rate. This process is called neurogenesis. It is essential. Those new brain cells help wire the circuits you will use for the rest of your life. Wonderful. Necessary. Very productive. Also, apparently a little destructive. Jocelyn and Franklin suspected there was a cost. Every time a new neuron joins an existing circuit, it can disrupt the connections already there. And those connections may be holding memories. Imagine trying to keep a diary in a house where builders keep knocking down walls, adding rooms, moving the kitchen, and saying, "No worries, this is progress." Technically, yes, but your diary is now under wet cement. To test the idea, they ran experiments on mice. When they artificially increased neurogenesis in adult mice, the mice started forgetting things they had already learned. Very unfair. Imagine studying for an exam and then your brain says, "Good news, I renovated." When the researchers slowed neurogenesis in infant mice, those young mice held on to memories longer than usual. The results pointed to a deeply weird conclusion. Your baby brain was not too weak to hold memories. It was too busy growing. The explosion of new neurons that built your brain also overwrote the memories stored inside it. Your earliest experiences were not lost because they were never saved. They were lost because your brain kept building new rooms and tearing down the old walls. A tiny brain with a hard hat. No respect for sentimental objects. But there is another layer, and this one might be the strangest of all. To form what scientists call autobiographical memory, the kind of memory where you are the main character and can replay an event in your mind, you need something most people take for granted. You need a sense of self. You need to understand that you exist as a person, separate from the world around you. That things are happening to you, not just happening. Not just sounds, colors, hunger, warmth, light, blanket, spoon, floor. Why is everyone so tall? You need a me. Developmental psychologists Mark Howe and Mary Courage argued in the late 1990s that this is a critical missing piece. Before roughly 18 to 24 months, infants do not fully recognize themselves as separate individuals. The classic test is simple. Put a dot of rouge on a baby's nose and place them in front of a mirror. Before around 18 months, babies often treat the reflection like another child. They do not reach for the mark on their own face. They just look at the mirror baby like, wow, that kid also has terrible posture. After 18 months, something changes. They reach for their own nose. They recognize that the person in the mirror is them. And that moment, the birth of self-recognition, lines up closely with the earliest age when autobiographical memories can begin to form. In other words, you partly cannot remember being a baby because there was not yet a you in the way you experience yourself now. There was no narrator inside your head packaging events into a story about a person called you. No inner voice saying, "This was the day I ate banana and betrayed the peas forever," which raises an uncomfortable question. If you had no continuous sense of self, and the brain that held your earliest experiences physically rewired itself beyond recognition, is the baby in your old photos actually you? Or is that someone else? Someone who lived in the same body, cried with your lungs, wore your ridiculous tiny hat, but whose mind was literally disassembled and rebuilt neuron by neuron into the person sitting here now. A little unsettling. Also, that baby may still owe your parents several nights of sleep. There is one more piece. Language. Developmental psychologist Catherine Nelson spent years studying how children form lasting memories. Her conclusion was that language does not just describe memory. It structures memory. Before you could speak, your experiences were encoded as raw sensory impressions. Sounds, textures, emotions, like the smell of your mother, the feeling of being carried, the horror of peas. But without words to organize those impressions, they had no framework to attach to. Once children begin speaking, and especially once adults start talking with them about past events, memory changes. Remember when we went to the park? Remember when you fell? Remember when you screamed because the banana broke in half and apparently that was a personal betrayal? Those conversations help build memory. They turn experience into story. Language gives memory a skeleton. Without it, experiences are like water with no container. They exist for a moment. They shine. Then they slip away. And this is not just theory. Psychologist Chi Wang at Cornell found that the age of your earliest memory can vary depending on culture. In many Western cultures, parents often narrate children's experiences. They ask questions, tell stories, build personal narratives, and place the child at the center of events. Earliest memories tend to start around age 3.5. Among the Maori of New Zealand, where oral tradition places strong emphasis on personal history and storytelling, average first memories can reach back closer to age 2.5. In some East Asian cultures, where early childhood stories may focus less on the individual and more on family or group context, first memories often begin closer to age 4 or later. The culture you grow up in can literally shape how far back your memory reaches. So here is what happened to your earliest years. Your hippocampus was not ready to build adult-like long-term memories. And even when it started trying, a flood of new neurons came rushing through and disrupted the circuits holding those memories in place. You had no stable concept of self to anchor experiences to. You had no language to organize those experiences into a story that could survive. It was not one thing. It was everything all at once. Every human being who has ever lived went through this. Every person you have ever met has a black hole where the first years of their life should be. Your friend, your boss, your grandmother, the person acting very confident in the grocery store checkout line. All of them. Nobody remembers the beginning. And the reason is not that your baby brain was simple. It was doing something far more important than remembering. It was becoming you. And to do that, it had to destroy the person who came before. Which sounds terrifying. But also, honestly, kind of impressive for someone who could not even hold a spoon properly.